Hey guys, Kirk here, and thank you for joining me on a new video on the channel. This video is going to be the third video of our Build Worlds V2 series, and in this video in particular what I want to talk about and showcase is the landscape sculpting mode as well as using alpha brushes. Over the past two videos in this series we have set up our project and enabled world partition. In the previous video in particular, I showcased world partition and how it works. If you're interested in creating game environments as a whole and want to use world partition, I would highly recommend starting this series over. But if you're just here to know about the landscape sculpting tools, then feel free to sit and join in with the video. Before we get started showcasing the landscape sculpting tools, there is a few pointers that I want to point out, or disclaimers if you like, about changes in the series that I've made and thought about this week. One of them, the main one, is being the landmass plugins. Not plugins. The landmass plugin I was going to use on this environment to create our mountains in such a way. But after vigorous reading and exploring, you will find that the landmass plugin for mountains alone is not advisable with world partition. Don't ask me why, I don't know. I've never used the landmass plugin to make mountains on a world partition map before. In all honesty, if I create game worlds, I either sculpt it or use a height map. But that doesn't mean jump into your plugins and start removing the landmass plugin. It is still needed throughout the series for various things like your water system and other little things like that, like blueprints and things like that. So don't run off removing the landmass plugin. It's still very useful within the series, but we won't be using that plugin to create mountains. Instead we'll be using alpha brushes, which I'll showcase a little bit later on. Another point I want to make is the sculpting mode Unreal Engine documentation. This is very good. I'll leave a link in the description to this website, which we should all be familiar with. And what this is going to tell us is the different tools that can be used. As you can see, this is just the sculpt mode page. But if we come to the left hand side here, you'll see there's copy and paste. Blueprint brushes. Blueprint brushes is the landmass plugin we've just been talking about. We'll click on that and let it change. It wants you to use plugins. As you can see there, it's got landmass. That's essentially what that is. And then you have all the other tools underneath it, like erosion tool, flatten tool, mirror tool, and smooth tool, sculpt tool, and all that good stuff. I just want to showcase the documentation because it is very useful for landscapes and landscape editing. I'll leave a link in the description, but all this we're going to be showcasing in today's video anyway. So yeah, I'd highly recommend checking the documentation out, especially if you're very new to sculpting a landscape. One more thing that I want to showcase, and that is PureRef. PureRef is possibly one of the most important tools you will get for creating game environments. The biggest part of game environments when creating them is reference images and planning. For me, I've already set some up, which I'll showcase shortly. But it's highly advisable to just jump in here, go on Google, and then maybe maybe landscape biomes, if you like. There you go at the bottom. Backlit landscape biomes, and just go on to images. You'll see a lot of images here. Very easy to use this website. Very easy to use this. You would essentially just say you like this image here, just click and hold, drag it into there and let it do its thing. You will get this sometimes with some of the images. What I tend to do is just click on them all and delete them. And there you go, you've added an image to PureRef. You will right click, save, and then save as and call it what you want. Like I said, I've already done this, so I'll open that now. So as you can see, I've been busy getting reference images. What I'm going to do is just click anywhere on here, Control and F, and it'll make it full screen. And as you can see here, I've got some environmental concepts. These are just designs. These are not particularly what you follow, if you like. Just get yourself some idea of what you're looking for here. These are more low poly. These concept images are artist driven images. They're not particularly environments that have been made or in natural world. It's just images that people have drawn or painted, which can be used like this one. I like the look of this one, even though it gets a bit blurry when you get close to it. But this kind of environment, if I was to make this kind of environment, I would definitely be using Gaia. But this one, I've seen this image. This is a game. I can't remember the name of the game, if I'm being honest. But I do like this. You can see there's multiple biomes. It is low poly. As you can see, it is low poly. But you can see we've got a sandy bit here, got a lot of rocky bit here, grass bits here, and forestry and all this good stuff. With this environment we're making in Build Worlds V2, it is going to be multiple biomes in it. That's why I've got these here. I've got grass landscapes. This just indicates a lot of environments with grass and colours and how it looks in the natural world. And then I've got these sandy landscapes, which shows me what kind of vegetation and what kind of environments sand is formed in, if you like. I've got snowy landscapes. As you can see, we've got crystal blue water here reflecting on the icebergs, and it's just really, really good. And you can see the other one that I've got here is tundra landscapes. These are the reference images I'm going to be using throughout this series. If you want this kind of thing and you don't want to make your own reference images up, then give us a shout on Discord and I'll quite happily share this with you. But yeah, like I say, this is what I'm going to be using. So it's very important for planning. Don't forget, you can come in here as well, right click and add text. Where's the text bit? Window mode. What's that? Transparent to mouse. Mouse events. No, cancel that. I can't find it. Where is it? Really can't find it. But there is a place where you can. Is it T? No. There's somewhere where you can get. Anyway, let's make the video really long. This. But there is a. I've done it here. You can see. I've got text up here. Maybe you could just Control and C and Control and V, and you could write all your plans down in here. I'll probably do that over time. But it's very powerful anyway. To use pure ref. I just thought I'd showcase that with you guys. Okay, so I'm going to close that web browser down. We're not going to need it. And here is Unreal Engine. Now we've got the landmass plugin, reference images and the documentation speech out the way. I want to jump into Unreal Engine now and start showcasing the tools that you can use in landscape mode. As you can see, I've got my world partition window open here. Like I said earlier in the video, if you're interested about starting an environment with world partition, I'd advise starting the series over. Okay, so I'm going to drag over all of it and then load region from selection. Just let these load. Okay, so these are all the streaming proxies for our landscape, which are here in this folder. You can see all these streaming proxies here. I think in the last video I left this actual landscape actor outside this folder, but as you can see I've dragged it in there since the last video, but it's not a big deal. Okay, so as you can see we've got our whole landscape here opened up. For the purpose of today's video, I'm not going to use the whole landscape, it will just slow me down. I just wanted to showcase loading and unloading the proxies. I'm going to right click and unload selected proxies. What I'm going to do is just move forward. And you can see now on my world partition, I've got that little white triangle. I showcased this in the previous video, and that's just essentially my player, or my camera if you like. As you can see, it's turning as I rotate. And I've done that to better indicate what side of the landscape I want. So I'm just going to click and drag over these four like this. I'm going to right click and load region from selection. And you can see we've got this little bit of landscape here now to work with. It's just for performance reason, guys, in this tutorial. So yeah, now we've got our landscape open. Let's go to the landscaping mode. I'm just going to hit the details tab first to reduce my concentration of world partition. So we'll go to the top here, top left where it says selection mode, click that, press shift 2 or just click on landscape, and let's open the landscaping mode. Okay, one of the first things I generally do when I come to landscaping a terrain, which is pretty much 60% of the work I do sculpting. So as you can see here, I've got edit layers. This is the first layer that we've created. When we created our landscape, we enabled enable edit layers, and this is what it does, it creates layers. So instead of me starting to sculpt on here and then getting it massively wrong, I can just create a new layer. So for this layer, I'm going to click on it and then press F2. I'm going to call this a base layer, like so. Press enter, and now I've got my base layer, and this is the landscape itself, which is very powerful. Then I can right click on there and just click create, and it'll create a layer on top of my base layer now. And I'm going to press F2 on that. I might have to click it again. Press F2. Oh, being a bit of a pain in the bum. There you go. And I'm going to call this sculpting. And now I've got a new layer. I could choose between my base layer, which is the landscape itself, or my sculpting, and I can make all my sculpting changes on this particular layer. And that enables, if I get something wrong, like I sculpt a little bit and I'm like, no, I don't like that, I can simply just come in here, right click, delete or clear sculpt. If I clear sculpt, this layer should sculpting content will be completely cleared. Press yes, and it gets rid of them changes that I've made on that sculpting layer. And that is essentially how powerful edit layers is, so I always recommend enabling it. Okay, now we're on our sculpting tools. I'm just going to give you a bit of content driven info of how I'm going to display these tools. So a lot of tools have the same options, so like your tool strength, brush size, fall off, and clay brush. I'm going to disclaimer now, guys, I don't know what clay brush is. You could probably search it through the Unreal documentation, but I've never really found a reason to have to search for it because I've never used it, so it mustn't be particularly important, but feel free to Google it and find out what it does. I'll just state that right now. Okay, so at the minute I'm in the sculpting tool section here, and I'm going to go through each of these tools, but like I've just mentioned, a lot of the options will be the same. I'll indicate what options are the same quickly, and if there's stuff in there that I've never used or options in there I don't really change, I will indicate that as well. But the first one, sculpt, is the main one where I'm going to go through your brush type, fall off, and these parameters here, which some of them are self-explanatory. So we have a brush type here. As you can see, I'm going to make the brush size bigger so we can see our tool. As you can see, the brush size is there. I'll go through these real quick. Sorry, it's a bit unfortunate this. Go through the brush size real quick, like so. And it just changes the size of the brush. If I move across here, you can see in the middle of this brush, if I stop moving it around, there's a little inner circle as well, and that is where the power of the sculpt comes from. The outer circle is the edge of the fall off. As you can see here, we have an option, brush fall off. If I was to change this, and if you look here around this area, you can see my brush. If I put it there and then move across and move the fall off, you can see I'm changing that fall off. And what essentially this is, if I do this now and click sculpt, I've sculpted a little bit and there's hardly any fall off. If I make it near full fall off and sculpt again, you can see we're getting a little bit of a curved hill compared to a sharp incline from our brush. and that's essentially what your fall off does. At the top here, like I said, we've got brush types. So this is the simple circular brush that we're seeing here. What I'm going to do is just quickly erase this. So we'll go back to normal. Increase that brush size real quick. And just erase this. And the erase tool is pretty self-explanatory as I'm demonstrating it now. You just have a fall off and tool strength, brush size and all that. And it just erases the geometry that you've made changes to. Okay, so we have a brush type. This is normal, just showcased it. Below that we have brush fall off. So as I just indicated, the brush fall off, I do this now. What I'm going to do is just showcase this one, which I've already done. I'm going to increase to max tool strength for now. Just click like that. And as you can see, we're getting that kind of fall off, as you can see here from that curve. Do it again, you can see more of that fall off happening there. Okay, next one is the sharp linear fall off, and it's essentially the same thing, but it's a different kind of fall off. As you can see, it's more curved, and this is less curved. It's more linear and a sharp fall off there. The next one is more of a mushroom fall off. This is quite useful, this one actually. If I do that, look at that. Straight away, absolute dog's dinner. Just let my engine catch up. There we go. Oh, still buggy. It's because you'll get this kind of lag when you make good bits of changes to your geometry like that. Let me just remove that. I'll just press it once. And as you can see, we're starting to form a bit of a mushroom looking fall off for that piece. I've not changed the size or the fall off while I've demonstrated these, but you can see the difference. You can see the difference there in the fall off of this brush. Okay, we have the linear inset sharp. If I click here, do that. Once again. As you can see, this is more of a linear at the top, bit of a sharp fall off, and then it curves out. This is quite powerful, this fall off. The reason I say that, if I come back to references, and if you see this image here, we're getting this sharp rock here, and then we're getting that nice curved fall off here at the bottom. The same for the rest of them. It's quite neat. That you're getting it here as well. But I just wanted to showcase that kind of fall off, as it is quite useful. But they're the different stages of fall off. The brush fall off here, these are pretty much available in most of them. As you can see here, the brush fall off is available for most of them. So keep that in mind. The fall offs are quite powerful when intricately designing your landscape. Okay, so that's that. And then you have brush types. We've got alpha brushes. I'll showcase them later. As you can see, I've got one in there where I was testing the other day. I'll showcase alpha brushes a bit later. We have texture brushes as well. Essentially what this is, guys, is you can implement a texture into here, any texture you want. Make all the changes to the scale, rotation, the panning on the X and the Y, or it indicates here UV. Brush size, fall off, and all that good stuff, and you can essentially draw or deform the geometry based on that particular texture. Now, I'm going to be completely honest with you guys. I've created a lot of environments in my time, and I'm not gloating, but I have, and I've rarely used this. I'm not sure I have before. There's no need for it. All you need is this and the alpha brush. That's all you need. The next one is per component. So as you can see, each landscape has its own component, which was demonstrated in the last video where I indicated what components were. And essentially with this, I can change the height of this component, the height of this geometry, depending on that one particular component. If I click here and click again, it's changing the height of that geometry based off that one component in the landscape. Not particularly powerful. I mean, you could use it to base a height if you wanted to, but like I say, not particularly important. I rarely use that along with the texture one as well. So they're essentially the brush types that you get, and like some of the others, you get the same type of brush types as well. Okay, so that's that. The next one, I'm going to use the erase tool. This will let me clear this up as well. So the erase tool is essentially you're erasing the geometry. Pretty much the same settings as the sculpt tool with your tool strength, brush size and brush fall off. You can just erase like this. Just erase what you've done, essentially. And what this does is it erases the changes you've made based on this base layer that we've got at the bottom. This is just your standard landscape, what I told you about earlier. This erase tool will erase everything on your scene back to this level of your base layer. It's quite handy. There's a similar tool, the flatten tool, what does the same thing, but I'll showcase that a little bit later on. Okay, moving on, so we have the smooth tool. I'll need some geometry to showcase this smooth tool. So I'm just going to fire a bit of geometry here. Maybe do this. Might go per component like this. This is just to showcase the smooth tool. So click on smooth tool. As you can see, we've got our brush types here. As standard like before, you can smooth based off an alpha brush, and you can smooth based off these fall offs as well. You have tool strength, combined layer operations. This just combines all these layers to smooth on. So if I created a new layer, called it sculpting smoothing, it will sculpt with that particular layer if this is unchecked. Filter, kernel radius, this is just a filter for the smoothing. The radius smoothing is performed over higher values, smooth out bigger details, lower values only smooth out smaller details. So you can indicate the amount of smoothing you want depending on values. Don't really use it. I do use smooth tool a hell of a lot. It's really handy, but the options like this kernel radius and the combined layers, I just leave them at default, guys. I really do. There's no point in them. But simply with the smooth tool, you can simply just click and hold and smooth out these lines here. So you can make loads of changes to your environment. And then if you get them little gaps there like we just had, you can just smooth them out there and it gets rid of them lines. Very powerful. You can also move it down a little bit and get the landscape to deform from the ground up. So if I do it up here, down here, sorry, like this, and it's going to try and match it up so you're getting a nice gradient of smoothness, if you like. There's a lot of changes going on right now to the geometry, that's why you're getting these little stutters. That's one thing I would like to point out, guys, with this sculpting tools. It's quite important to save all the time, and it is, what's that? It's quite important to understand that using the landscaping tools within Unreal Engine can be a bit laggy, especially when you've got such a large landscape. So it's very important to remember that. It will look like Unreal Engine is freezed or crashed, but it's not. Same as I indicated in the previous video, that having patience with Unreal Engine is a must. So keep that in mind, please. There you go. I've just got a bit of lag there and another bit. And essentially all it's doing is rendering out what I'm doing here. As you can see, I'm still getting a bit of a weirdness there going on. Okay, so keep in mind that you can change your fall off here, depending on your strength and all that good stuff. But we are going to move over to the flatten tool now. The flatten tool is all the same, brush type, brush fall off. You have the combined layers. You have flatten mode both. I'd recommend keeping that on here. You can have raised if you want as well. It just raises that flatten tool. Raises the geometry to the flatness. Or you can have both. I indicate that here. And it just essentially creates that flatness for both the inclination and the rest of the landscape, let's just say. But like you can see, you've got both raised, lower, interval and terraced. I've never used interval or terrace, but you can use the raise and lower and both. Just experiment with them in your own time. You have a use, slope, flatten. I'm not even indicating what the flatten tool is. Okay, so I'll lower the size of my brush fall off and brush size. So flatten tool, if you get a little bit closer here, you can see you've got your normal rings, your outer ring, which is the fall off, and then the inner ring where the magic happens. In the middle of there, you'll see a little plus or a cross. With the flatten tool, you can set up multiple layers depending on the height. So like if I go to the sculpt tool, it's like this, and just raise this up and say, oh, there you go, that's a nice little height to work off. I can come to the flatten tool, and based off that cross where it is, if you can see obviously my thing is stretching, my brush, but that little cross is there. And if I click and hold from there, I can flatten out the terrain on that level. I can come a little bit closer and then flatten the tool off that level, flatten the terrain, sorry, off that level. I can come here and flatten it there, flatten it a little bit more, flatten it some more, and just keep doing it, and you can create that kind of terrace and effect in your landscape. Then you can come in to the smooth tool and just smooth it out. It just gives you a little bit more variation in your landscape. It's quite a powerful tool, the flatten tool, when sculpting. I do use it a hell of a lot, just to find height like this, and then I just go ahead and smooth it out. And if I don't like it, I can just come back to the flatten tool and resume what I'm doing and start working on something that's a bit more detailed, and back to the smooth tool like so. And then just keep in mind you can change the strength. That was a little powerful, and then just change it all about like this, but keeping that cliff face kind of side there. I can move this down as well and just get at the bottom of it to smooth up a little bit like so. Oh, quite a bit now, but as you can see, the smooth tool is quite nice and quite useful, and the flatten tool as well. You have use, slope, flatten. So if I click on this, what this is like, similar to with that cross where you can flatten out depending on where your cross is on the landscape. With this cross as well, I can flatten out depending off the slope. So if I flatten out on this slope, it flattens out the geometry based off that particular angle of that slope, as you can see. And then say I come down here where it's a little less gradient, I can then do it on that angle there as well. It's quite useful. As you can see, you can make some really nice effects here with that kind of sloping tool. I could do it here as well and get that. And you can just create multiple things like mountains and that using this slope tool here. Next, your pick value per apply. Constantly picks new values to flatten towards when dragging around instead of. Right, okay, so you can pick multiple. So it's picking multiple values to flatten at, depending off the angle. So if I stop slope flatten, I could just keep moving it around. As you can see, what it's doing essentially, instead of having this unchecked and being able to pick the height at what I want to work at, I could check this and it'll pick automatically based off the landscape and where the brush is, the height at which it flattens. Now this is really good for randomization in your workflow. I would highly recommend this. As you can see now, just with a few strokes, I've created a little bit of a thing going on here, which is quite nice. But yeah, that's quite a good little handy trick to have up your sleeve. You have terrace interval. Being honest, guys, don't know what this does. I've never really used it. So, doesn't seem to have changed much. And then you have terrace and smoothing. Like I say, I've never really used it before, guys. So I'm not going to try and showcase it. Okay, so ramp. Ramp is a very, very, very useful tool. I do use this a hell of a lot. And essentially it's so easy to use and so powerful, it's amazing. Essentially you click on ramp and then click at your high point. So if I click up here, you'll see I get a little icon there, and then I click down here and you can click. You can see there I've got the outline of a ramp. You have your ramp width, which is self-explanatory. You can change the width of the ramp, and then you can change the fall off, where the inner side comes closer to the outer side, the less fall off you wanted. Just like that. You can see we've got a little ramp, and then I just click add ramp. And you can see it's added a nice little ramp there. And the best thing about this tool is you can just move it across like this, and add ramp again, move it across some more, add ramp again, and then move it like this and up a little bit and add ramp again. So as you can see, we can start to form some sort of mountain with these ramp tool, if you like. Do that, add ramp, and it's just essentially all you have to do is keep moving this lower point and add the ramp, or you can move the higher point as well. You do that, add ramp, it'll just randomly add that ramp in there as well. That's it, add ramp. Next is the erosion tool. This tool, the top 5 tools I've just showcased are probably most important, but the most used is a different story. So erosion tool. This erosion tool creates erosion on the geometry. Let's increase that strength a little bit. You have a threshold at which how much power of erosion you want. Surface thickness, don't worry about that, leave it at default. Iterations is how many times you want it to iterate over the landscape when eroding, whatever it's eroding. I tend to just leave the threshold surface thickness iterations at default. It seems to work fine for me. You can increase the noise scale, which I do sometimes, and it just essentially creates some more noise when eroding. And then you have lower, raise and both. So with both selected, you can particularly erode, and it adds to geometry and lowers from the geometry as well. Very powerful tool this is, guys. Very powerful tool, and as you can see, just adding a few ramps in there, you can give yourself what looks like a bit of a mountain, like so. Just keep adding and adding to it, like so. You can get right to a point there. It's just sat right at the top, like so. Just add right to the top here, and we can get some erosion going here. But yeah, experiment a little bit. You could do raise as well, just raise the erosion into the geometry, which is very good. I do like it. And what essentially this is doing, as you can see, it's adding like a flat surface to it, but it'll add more erosion on there. Change the threshold a little bit to raise it up some more, and you're getting that little lip at the top here, which is nice as well. But that's essentially what the erosion tool does. Very powerful. I would highly recommend experimenting with it. Let's just get rid of that, and then we can make this look like some sort of mountain range. And as you can see, just with the erosion tool just set to raise, we can create some indentations which cause a rubbling kind of effect, which is good detail for mountains. Or you could set it to lower, which creates this kind of thing on this side, like so. And as you can see here, just in no time at all, we've got something that kind of looks like a mountain. I'm not saying it looks like a mountain, or I am as well. And we could just keep iterating on this all the time. Increase the iterations, actually, now I said it. And as you can see there, it's getting a little bit more vigorous with that detail. So yeah, like I say, I've just created myself a little low poly mountain, if you like. Just keep going over it and creating indentations and all that good stuff. But that's pretty much how the erosion tool works. Next you have the hydro tool. This is the same kind of options. It does the same kind of thing, but if I click on positive and then start doing this, and you'll see it's just adding some more indentations into the side of this wannabe mountain, and it just creates, from a distance, this just creates nice effects for this erosion, like so. And we can just make it look a little bit more appealing, and try and form some sort of cliffside mountain, like so. Okay, so as you can see, it's just made a complete dog's dinner of that. So I would come over the erosion tool again and just add that in there a little bit. It's just a little tiny bits. Don't get rid of all the hydro erosion, but the more randomization you get from it, the better it'll look at a distance. So your erosion and hydro tools pretty much do the same thing, like I say. It's just about getting in there and experimenting, changing it from positive and both and iterations and all this good stuff. That can be changed in here. So what's next? The noise. This noise, I do not like it. I'm being straight honest with you guys. I don't like it. So if I do this now, you can see it's just going to change it up a little bit, and now this could look more like, I just feel there's less control in this noise thing here. We'll go noise scale, reduce that some more. You can see here now, we're getting that noise that's appearing on these peaks, like so. As you can see, it just makes a complete dog's dinner. This is just my thoughts on it, to be honest. I just don't like it that much. So if I come to the smooth tool and just click on here, and some of it's alright, like I say, but I don't really use it that much, the noise tool. But you can see you've got your total strength. You could have subtract on there as well, and just subtract down into the geometry. I mean, it could be good for creating randomization on the ground, but as you can see, it doesn't really leave a good after effect. It's very, very rare that I use this tool, in all honesty, but you feel free to experiment with it. There's not many options in there. You can change the brush fall off and all this good stuff as well. Retopology. Retopology will not work with landscape layer system. So at the beginning of this series, we enabled edit layers, and retopology won't work with that. You essentially need to have one whole landscape, what you're going to edit with, or some kind of mesh. Don't know, never used retopology, don't need it. But essentially, what it is in general is, if I say I use my flatten tool, just come out of here. Oh. It's still based off the apply random value, but that is quite good, to be honest. If I come from here, just do this, you can see now I'm getting, let's reduce, just while I showcase this, I'm going to reduce that. And now we're getting that sharp edge, what I'm looking for. Essentially what the retopology does, just like it does in Blender or any other 3D software, it adds to the geometry. So if I come into wireframe mode, you'll see here that all these vertices are stretched and all the geometry is stretched. And when you use retopology and go over it, it just adds more vertices in here, like it does in Blender and 3ds Max and all that good stuff. But like I said, never really used it, never really seen reason to use it, and I've never really used it because of this. So yeah, I can't tell you much about that apart from that it adds to the geometry. Visibility. Essentially, this is the same thing. Note there are some areas where visibility painting is disabled. Right, okay, so visibility. Essentially what this is, and say I'm in this mountain here, and what I want is a cave. I can come here and just draw a cave in here. But as you can see from here, you need the landscape visibility mask. That can only be found in your landscape shader. So if I applied a landscape shader to here that has this particular layer sample, which is a landscape visibility mask, I can come in here and paint holes into the landscape. Why you want to do that is entirely up to you. It essentially just creates a hole, and then you could probably go in there and use nanite, assets to create a cave, that's probably a good idea. But to use it this way, you would need a landscape shader with the landscape visibility mask node applied in that in your opacity of your landscape shader. Next is blueprints. So blueprints are what we indicated before, the landmass plugin, the water plugin and everything like that. So you would just click on here and then just say I had the water brush manager, and then I just clicked anywhere on the landscape, it would add that plugin to the landscape. And that's essentially all that blueprints is. We will be using this a little bit later on, but right now there's no need for it, as this is just where you edit your blueprints that are used to sculpt your landscape. Like I've noticed recently, a good guy I'm subscribed to on YouTube called Joe Garth, who creates environments. He's recently released a new plugin where you can create mountains based off blueprints. The price of it is a little bit extreme, which I've discussed in my community in Discord, but it's still a good tool, and I'll probably wait for it to reduce in price a little bit more. But this area, the blueprint area, is where you would add them particular brushes to change the landscape. Next to that is mirror. Mirror's pretty self-explanatory. It mirrors the geometry you've got. So if I drag this over here, I do this like that, and what it's going to do, I'm going to change that from -x to +- to +x, sorry, to -x. And what it's going to do here is if I click, and you can move it at the top here with the mirror points, you can move it there, and this just changes the width. But because we're using the world partition, we don't need to change the width. But I've set it to the +x axis. I've set it so it's mirroring the +x axis and setting it to the minus. And essentially, if I show you here, just click apply. It creates this geometry that we've done here on the other side here. Very powerful tool, very useful in some cases. The only problem with the mirror tool is that you get repetition. So as you can see, we've got the exact same mountains here, but it's just orientated, it's just changed a little bit. So Control and Z, let's get rid of that change. And you could change this as well. So if I go rotate +x like this, and I'll just do this, and I can rotate it around. So this side, as you can see, this little outy bit, what we flattened out just then, is there, but it's rotated. Quite a nice tool, like I say. If you have, if I had a decent side on here, I'd rotate it and mirror it on the other side of the landscape. That would be a good thing to do. But apart from that, we're not going to be using this tool. Selection tool. This is very good. If you remember to use it, it's very, very, very good. And essentially what I can do with this is mask out areas that I don't want to edit. So what I mean by that is if I come here, as you can see, I've got a negative mask. If enabled, protects the selected region from changes. If disabled, only allows changes to the selected region. So what this means is if I come here and just start painting down this mask, like I have done here now, and then there's that done, and I go to sculpt, and I can just sculpt up here. But once I get to that mask, it won't let me make changes in that mask. That's what the select mask is. So if I come here like this, you can see it will deform in the mask, but it's doing a really good job at not enabling any geometry changes within that mask. You can vice versa as well, so you can mask out the rest of the landscape. And say I wanted to create a lake in here, and I can come in here and just make the changes in this area like so. So if I go to the flatten tool, come here and start flattening this out, you'll see it'll make some changes on the other side of the mask, but that can't be helped as it needs to stay connected like so. As you can see, we've got a little bit of mask there, which is cool. And that's essentially it. That's essentially what it is. So if I clear region selection, and now we're free to go in here and do what we want, and we can go in and flatten that little point out and made all these changes. That select tool is a powerful tool. I would advise using that when creating lakes. It does do a lot for you. And then you could probably come in here with the erosion tool and just start eroding down for your lake, like so. Or like beaches and things like that. But as you can see there, we've got a nice little valley here that you could have like a volcano in or something like that. I don't know, it's up to you. Okay, so that's the select tool. Very useful, tool strength as well. Use region as mask, keep that enabled, just a bit of advice. And then you've just got all your common changes as well. So the copy tool, this is a good tool. Let's find where it spawned it. It spawned it right over there, which is not what I wanted. So essentially the copy tool is you use this widget or gizmo if you like, well they call it a gizmo. And the easiest way to use this, guys, is just use it like a cube. So if I come here and stretch this up a little bit, like so, and move it down, I think some of you will know what I'm getting at here. And I could just move this out a little bit and then move it out some more. And so long as the gizmo encompasses the area of which you want to work, so I could essentially move that up a little bit. Oh wait, there, it needs to be below there. So I could essentially do that and make it a bit higher. Okay, so I've covered this mountain with this gizmo, and this gizmo is going to copy this. So if I click copy data to gizmo, and it's going to copy that, and now you can see that gizmo has got that landscape in there, which is very powerful. So if I like that design, I want to use it as some other part of my landscape, like over here, then you're free to do so. And you'll see there's no paste data of gizmo or something like that. The best way to do this, guys, is to simply, once you've copied it with a copy data and you've moved the gizmo to where you want it, like you would in Windows or any text editing software, if you're a coder, you'll know what I mean. Or any, you all should know what I mean here. Just simply press Control and V and it pastes it. That simple. And there you go. It's changed that geometry of that. What's happened on that edge bit? Quite intrigued by that. But as you can see here, we've copied that information from over there to over here. This is a good tool to have. Good useful tool to reduce the amount of sculpting you have to do. Keep in mind as well, just like any cube, you can rotate it, Control and V. There you go. Got some more landscape stuff going on as well there. And then you could clear gizmo data, gets rid of it, and then you could just click on sculpt and it's gone. And now we've transferred this mountain thing, looking thing here, over to here. It's dead easy, dead simple, and dead nice. But yeah, that's pretty much it. You could, I've not used this gizmo import height map before. That'd be something to explore. But yeah, as you can see, that is pretty much it for this tutorial. I've gone through all the tools that can be used to sculpt your landscape, and keep in mind, guys, that it is very powerful. Just get used to them. If you've not used them that much before, or even you have and you've learned something new, just use them even more. Use your imagination, build something up, and you'll be very surprised after using the sculpting tools for around half an hour what you've created, and then your mind will go, oh, that'll be nice there, or oh, that'll be nice there, and all this. Let me just cancel that. And that'll be nice there, and this, that, and the other. It'd be really good to use. Very powerful. For this series, guys, Build Worlds V2, I am going to be sculpting most of the landscape, but I will be using alpha brushes as well. That's why I've not ended the tutorial, because I want to showcase alpha brushes now and how powerful they are. But for the most part, like I say, for the environment, I'm going to be using alpha brushes and sculpting at the same time to create an environment. It's not going to be done as a tutorial. What I'm going to do, I'm going to record myself doing it off camera, and just release a video that's like level speed design. But I'm going to be using all the tools that I've showcased in this tutorial, along with the alpha brushes that we're going to showcase in a minute. That's all I'm going to use to create this world that we're building in this series. But like I say, I'll reiterate that I'm going to do it off camera, but I'll record myself doing it and release the video as a speed level design video. I feel that'll save a lot of messing about and complaints in this series. Okay, so alpha brushes. Go to my content drawer, you'll see I've got alpha brushes already here. These alpha brushes will be readily available for everyone to use who jump in Discord. Once you jump in Discord, you'll see you won't see much. Just go to the rules tab, or the rules page. At the bottom of that rules page, you have a little green tick, and that tick will verify you as a human and essentially give you access to the rest of Discord, which I would love to see your designs using the sculpting tools. There's a section in there called Kirk's section or something like that, and there's a little chat in there called Kirk's downloads, and these alpha brushes I will include there to download for free. Okay, so like I stated before, guys, we're going to use the alpha brushes now. As you can see, I've already got one in there, and you can see, if I go really close, you can see the alpha brushes there, but that's not really going to make a good mountain. If I maximise this strength and maximise that brush size, you can see that the brush size really isn't that big, but don't be put off by that. And the reason I say that is because you can actually manually change the size of this brush. So if I come to where it says brush size here, click on it, and I'm going to put in here 60,000, like so. And before, don't press enter, just click away from it, and it'll add that brush size in there. And as you can see, the brush is a lot more larger. I'm going to rotate this to 90. As you can see, it's a lot more larger, that brush now, which is great. This is not just here for brush size, you can do it with the strength as well. So if I come in here and press 6, yeah, and then click away, you will notice doing this, guys, that your engine will slow down. That is completely normal. Have patience. And what happens here now, as you can see, when I get to the edge of my landscape, it turns red, that brush. When I come away from it, it turns back to grey with a white outline. And the reason for that is because this engine feels, if you make a change here, like it will change. And keep it in mind, we're using world partition, so we've only got this section loaded at the minute. So if we made a change where it's red, it will change the geometry of the landscape, and when we come to load the rest of the landscape, it'll be broken. So keep in mind to keep that out of the edge, otherwise you will get complications. So now we've changed our tool strength to 6. Our brush size is really big, to 60,000 centimeters, and then all we have to do is find the right point that you want, and then just click. Now once you've clicked, it'll look like your engine's crashed, or it may be dead slow, or it may be doing it dead fast, you don't know. But don't just Alt and F4 it and all this good stuff to close the engine. It won't crash, just give it time and let it build. If I click now, there you go. Straight away, pretty much straight away should I say, it's built that mountain for me using the alpha brush, which is quite nice. You will get a lot of stutter in there, which is normal, like so. Okay, so there we go, it started. The engine is now building the geometry. It showcased what it's doing, but now it's building the geometry. And as you can see at the top, I can't move my mouse because it feels and looks like Unreal Engine has crashed, but it's not. This is actually good that it's done this. It's just building the geometry of that landscape now. So give it time. And the downside to this is it auto saves as well. So that adds up a lot of extra time. So we'll just wait for the engine to catch up, and I'll be right back with you. So as you can see now, I can move my thing again, which is normal. It's great. And that took around 20 seconds to complete, guys. Even though it seems like a second for you, because I probably skipped it in the editing. It took around 20 seconds that, so, and like I've stated a few times, I've got quite a powerful machine and it can have them kind of effects on it. If I move over here now, as you can see, I could come in here and change to another alpha brush. Say I drag this in here, like so. If the alpha brush is not correct, it will crash your machine. So you want to open your alpha brush and we'll just look at the settings here. As you can see, I've just got a normal standard DTX1 for my mask. Nothing's changed. I've not changed anything. So I'd advise, if you get these from the Discord, to just leave them as be. Some masks you get can crash your engine, so it's very important, but don't worry about it. So yeah, so like as you can see, I've showcased using this alpha brush. I'm going to use it again here, but what I'm going to do this time, guys, is I'm going to hold left shift down and then click. And as you can see, it's indented into the landscape. This is the power of alpha brushes. I've now got an indentation into my landscape, which is very good. It's exactly what I wanted. As you can see, I've got some mountain images, and when I'm down here, look how big that mountain looks. It's great. I can also rotate this to 45 degrees, like so. And then I can come maybe over here. I've made this change, and I'm going to move it to about there. I'm going to hold left shift. Oh, I'll move it to about here. Maybe there, yeah. Left shift, click again. And now it's just added even more indentations. As you can see, this has gone really deep. But look how nice that looks now, which is quite good. Not only that, I can come to here again, and you don't have to hold left shift. I'm going to move it over here a bit more. Just click there, and I've added some more hills now. And the effects you get from just one alpha brush is amazing. Now I can come in here, change this alpha brush. I'm gonna choose this one, and then I could go on here right at the top of this mountain because it's a little bit flat, and then just click one. There you go. Oh, nice big mountain. And the way I've made these changes on these alpha brushes, if we get close, we've got all these little bubbles on them. And I did this with levels in paint.net. And what this is doing is adding detail. So if this was a cinematic, the amount of detail in the geometry you get there is great. If you'd like, keep in mind, I'll come out of landscape mode. Like so. I'm going to right click here and play from here. And you'll notice here, guys, hang on, it's running really slow. There we go. Look at these now. Yeah, but you're seeing these bumps as I walk along. You're probably thinking, why are you going dead fast? Well, I did this in the previous video. It's upscaled my walking speed. But you don't need to worry about that, guys. You just escape back to landscape mode. Now I'm going to go to the smooth tool. I'm going to set that to default. But if I come right up like this, guys, speed it up even more. Right, so if you don't want that kind of detail on the grass floors, oh, that's a bit too big. Do that. You can just smooth it out, like so. Just smooth out where you don't want them bumps. Right, it's dead easy, it's simple. And if I come back down to here now, we're still getting some nice details, but like there, you just smooth the details out. And then when you're walking, you play from here. Okay, and that's it. And now I've got some smooth hills as well as some high detailed mountains like that, which is exactly what I am looking for, guys. Okay, so that seems to be it. I would highly recommend, once you've made changes as well, guys, as you can see, I've got 6 unsaved down here. Come out of landscape mode and then click your unsaved, and M chair, where's that? Don't remember that, but anyway, so we're just going to save that. Sometimes when saving to geometry changes you get errors, but that's mainly when you use the landmass plugin. But if you just use alpha brushes and sculpting tools, you get some really nice results. So yeah, that brings me to the end of my tutorial. So like I said, let me just unload this, load it all in. You've got to remember that we only use that one corner of our landscape to make all these changes. Just like register and load all these proxies in. And there we go. Like I say, we only used this corner of the landscape to showcase what I was talking about. But as you can see, as I come around there, you can't see it that much there. But if we got really close to the edge, you'd have like a weird lip here and it'd look all strange. But yeah, that's come to an end of this tutorial. I hope you've learned something in the Landscape Sculpting Tools. I hope you jump in our Discord and grab the alpha brushes so you can create these lovely looking mountains like this. And I hope you have fun. If you enjoyed what you've seen and you've learned quite a bit from today's tutorial, then leave a like and subscribe and share it with your friends and all that good stuff. And I'll see you in the next tutorial, guys, if you're following the series along. Goodbye.